Okay, we'll move then seamlessly then into next item around missing people, which I know is something that exercises West Yorkshire Police well on a daily basis, to be fair. But I'll hand over to you to report on this one.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so actually, the missing obviously is a hugely complex and is obviously providing a significant demand on our resources presently. And we obviously do recognise that link between missing and children that are subject to sexual abuse is widely recognised as part and parcel of that. So our processes around both of those key elements of safeguarding is determined to make sure that we safeguard people as best we can. I think one of the since we last reported to you on missing, really, I think January's seen the publication of the authorised professional practice on missing. Obviously we had the event in December of last year at Huddersfield, where we talked about how we can look to develop our processes, and I think there's further meetings taking place around that. But that was the new authorised professional practice certainly does give us some indicators of how we should be moving forward in terms of a police organisation. It has taken some time for that to be published, but thankfully it's now being delivered. In the report, there are obviously a number of sort of salient points that have the app actually detailed. Unless I don't propose to go through them all, I'll just sort of pick out the main ones. Obviously, one thing for us is for West Yorkshire Police was the removal of the low risk no deployment category, which fortunately we were on the front foot with that. We'd already met quite early on with Chief Constable Mike Veal's team. Superintendent Steve Cox there, so we were already, our processes and policies were already changing as a result of those conversations that we'd had early doors. And again, I think as my role as the governance structure, I think that's my job really, to make sure that we do get ahead of the game in terms of rather than waiting for all these to come out, that actually we're on the front foot. So we just have 4 categories now, so high, medium and low, and no apparent risk. So there's change in terminologies around the safe and well checks. So the safe and well checks are now no longer called safe and well checks, they're now called prevention checks. And I think there are some opportunities that we're going to devise with local authorities, is looking at how we train our officers around doing these preventative checks. Again, so rather than, what do we want to achieve from the prevention checks? Rather than the safe and well checks was, are you okay? That's pretty much it. So how can we look to intervene at an earlier stage to stop the repeat occurrences? There's also a recommendation that the missing person coordinator role should be looked at, to focus really more on actually problem solving than actually dealing with incidents themselves. There's also making sure that our partner agencies conduct their own inquiries in respect of those people that are in their care, done at a more timely fashion, and are expected to conduct reasonable inquiries, so such as the hospitals, etc. And where we have high-risk missing persons, that all samples are obtained at least within 24 hours of a person going missing, and those medium and low-risk missing person incidents that we obtain samples for forensic opportunities within 7 days of that report being made. So there are a number of quite significant changes in there for us, and obviously we pick them up through the governance unit and we will monitor those. The other ones that I've probably missed one out there actually, which was around the use of concern for welfare. So some of our people have been brought in actually trying to unpick those concern for welfare, making sure that they are not missing. So as part of our daily report that I submit to the Chief Officer team, is looking at those categories around missing from home, high, medium, low, and actually those that are looking concerned for safety. So if there are high volumes in there, we will pick those and make sure there's nothing untoward in those. The data from the National Crime Agency, again, because different forces measure in different ways, the data that's been provided can be a little bit all over, if I'm being honest. So nationally, according to the NCA, there were 335,625 calls to the police service of England and Wales. On average, that translates to 242,000 incidents, and roughly that's around about 370 missing individuals per day going missing. And nationally, that equates to a 16% increase across across the 43 forces. The data set also indicates that West Yorkshire Police recorded 4,410 adult missing incidents, which is a 72% increase on the previous year from 2,564. Incidents around children have increased by 66%, so 6,757 compared to 4,067 the previous year. So we're above the national average in terms of missing incidents at 17.4%. The recorded incidents of high risk, again, that's seen a significant increase there of 88% increase, which again is a substantial change from the previous year. And obviously the report then details, unless you want to go through those, I don't propose to do so. So we've looked to actually continually improve our response to missing persons, and the audits has provided feedback to districts and informed policy development and development of staff, including the customer contact centre. Hub commanders and duty inspectors have all undergone HYDRA training now in respect of assessing risk, so making sure that we identify risk at the earliest opportunity and the tactical options associated with that risk are implemented. We've now done that with sergeants also. So we are looking at how we can improve the assessment of risk around those individuals. The ongoing work and developments, we held the workshop that I previously mentioned. That was really well attended. We had Ofsted there. Parveen Hussain was the Ofsted representative. Yourself and the chief was there. And again, there's follow-up work to do around that, working with partners. Within, no child can be deemed at risk of child sexual exploitation if they're deemed at low risk or absent. So again, that's another step in the right direction. So that again is assessment risk. So that will actually play out in terms of the numbers of volumes that we've seen across the data that I've reported. We've got some great information sharing now with Ofsted. And again, this is something that we've actually, information sharing the two ways between Ofsted and the police has been something that, you know, our partners are quite envious of now, because I think we've done some real developments around that. So all the data that we've provided around children in missing homes, that is now fed to Ofsted, so that's parcel of that. That goes out to safeguarding boards as well. So all our partner agencies have seen the data and the demand that is facing on police. We're developing similar sort of processes with the Quality Care Commission, which I've got a meeting with them next week, so we'll try and develop that, which again, hopefully around some of our care settings for adults in hospitals, etc. And new student officers and newly promoted sergeants are also receiving training on missing. This is a key element and around vulnerable people. From a recording perspective, the niche Minerva model is being developed and fine-tuned by South Wales Police. We're hopefully going to run that out across West Yorkshire. So again, some of our prevention interviews where it contains intelligence, that will be rather than officers actually having to complete an intelligence form, it'll be a bit of a push button which will automatically feed through to our intelligence. So we'll hopefully see an increase in intelligence, which hopefully will inform our assessments and help us recover children and adults go missing moving down the line. We've got a missing consortium that again the Safeguarding Governance Unit have developed, so all the 5 district leads and together with partners agencies have met for the very first time last week, and that's looking at developing and sharing good practice around missing incidents and looking at those early opportunities around intervention to stop children and adults going missing. And we're obviously reviewing and revising the countywide, I don't want to do the countrywide, but the countywide protocol around missing children from home care. So that's some real exciting stuff for us on that. Of note that we are running the ERASE pilot, which has been undertaken in Wakefield, which is dedicated officers, PCSO officers, working with those children's homes that have seen high demand, again as a pilot process. We are seeing some tangible results around reductions in numbers of children going missing. And again, that's to be evaluated later on this year, but I think that's something that we could maybe replicate across the force. And obviously that will be presented to the Chief's Office team for consideration in due course. Another good development in terms of working with the consortium, which I forgot to mention, was around the agreement of local authorities now will have a local authority, a social worker who will attend where we have a high-risk incidents. They've now agreed that they will attend the special ops room when we have high-risk missing children from care. We'll attend those and provide us with extra support, intelligence information, and conduct some of our inquiries. So obviously have that shared responsibility about children going missing. So Wakefield, Kirklees, have agreed. Bradford are wanting to do that. Again, they're just sorting out the mechanics of that. And again, that'll be replicated across the force. So again, that is a real positive for us in terms of it solely just being a police responsibility. This now shares a parental responsibility with local authority leads as well. And obviously that great information sharing obviously gets children recovered and adults a lot quicker. So the sort of strategic risks again, missing demand continues to rise. We've seen certainly an increase in the number, which I know you're fully cited on, in the number of children's homes within West Yorkshire, recorded on West Yorkshire system. 74 in June 2016 to now 94 in February 2017. There's ongoing work around to that. We're working with planning departments within local authorities to get a notification of where children's homes intend to be built within West Yorkshire, so we can have those conversations with local authority. And I think that's down to some of the issues of maybe cheaper housing in some of our deprived areas. People seeking that as an opportunity to build a children's home. Looking at the role profiles around the police officers around the missing person coordinated roles, the APP is quite specific in about saying being strategic problem solving, and I'm going to call it the golden egg. It's the cross-government strategy, which we've obviously been waiting for some time now. Again, it's obviously been pushed back because of elections. We are waiting in the wings to be part of the expert delivery group on that. We're trying to find out the draft around the supporting action plan that will complement that cross-government strategy. And without getting an harassment warning myself, the chief officers, the staff officers to Mr. Neil is fully aware that we're ready to go as and when it's around missing. So, big area of business for us, but lots going on.
Thank you. Thanks for that. And just to go back to the covering report, I mean, as you know, and you mentioned it, we decided to launch the police and crime plan with a concentration on missing persons over in the Kirklees area. So it's good to hear about the progress, even since that meeting, on the number of fronts that is taking place. But again, the figures are quite stark, and I know from talking to yourselves and other colleagues how much of an impact this has when we've got nearly 5,000 missing persons called per year deemed at high risk alone, notwithstanding all the other calls that come in. So just to pick up on a few questions then, again, I think the report does mention about the contact centre staff being aware and understanding the risk factors. Can you just sort of say a bit more around what's being done with call centre staff?
Yeah, we'd identified that as a critical area where obviously the first point of call is obviously the contact centre, so it was really important that we got on the front foot with that. And so part of the audit process and development training we offered to Tom Donoghue was very receptive, I've got to say, around accommodating us in training the staff within the customer contact centre. So we are in regular contact with Tom, so the turnover in staff are there. We will then go present and deliver safeguarding training around identifying risk coming through the door or through the telephone around that. Tom obviously gets the audits that we conduct, so he can feed back to his staff around assessing risk. So that is an ongoing piece of work that we'll continue to do as part of our daily sort of performance really.
I mean, again, you just mentioned it, but we know that there is a fairly high turnover of staff within the call centre. I know we were looking at trying to introduce some measures to try and slow that down to some extent, but it's really, you know, how we sort of combat that issue along with the sort of understanding the risk factors when these types of calls come into the staff.
Yeah, what I was really keen to do was part of this induction pack, which obviously does actually cover a risk, identifying risk at the end. So we recognise that we can't do it one-to-one in training with individuals that are coming through, so that's why we've developed the induction pack, so they can have the induction pack and they can have a look at a referral process. So once we get a small group together, when we can then go out and deliver wider training to more staff rather than actually just doing it on one-to-one. So that's one of the reasons why we're really keen to develop this induction pack for people coming into the organisation, whether it's in the customer contact centre or public inquiry counter they've got there to refer to.
Yeah. Because I know there has been recruitment, hasn't there, into...
There's been a tremendous
Yeah.
amount of work to try and find ways of encouraging staff to stay within that contact management arena, and that's part and parcel of the overall review that's doing the programme of change at the moment.
Okay, just on page 2, can you just provide a bit of clarity on what forensic samples would need to be obtained from missing persons, particularly around the high-risk samples in those particular cases?
Yeah, I mean, this was something that again was new to the sort of the app. So forensic examples would include DNA, fingerprints, footprints, dental charts, etc., toothbrushes and stuff like that. We would obtain sort of immediately in respect of or within 24 hours now. And I think that's quite really well embedded in terms of the organisation, in terms of officers going to incidents of high risk. Although fingerprints and dental records may be sufficient to identify, if in the worst case scenario that we do come across a body, in some instances only partial remains. DNA is obviously the best way of identifying individuals, etc. So, but yeah, this was an interesting block in the app about saying what within giving it time specific around particular samples being obtained, because that's not been done previously.
And is that within the authorised professional practices?
Yeah.
We're following the guidance, who obviously sought some legal advice. Most of what we're talking about here is what we would call non-intimate samples that would be recovered. Clearly, there are issues around consent that we would have to think about as well, but the overriding issue when somebody is assessed as high risk is to try and find all means of being able to locate them. And as you know, sadly, sometimes we don't manage to locate people for some considerable time, and we have to be able to think about evidence recovery at the first available opportunity, which can be very difficult, and we handle it as sensitively as we possibly can with the families.
Yeah. And what's the policy around medium and low risk cases on forensic samples?
It's very similar. Obviously, they've got to be obtained within 7 days of the incident being reported. Again, not the DIs that probably tend to oversee that, where it tends to be prolonged inquiries are fully conversant and forms part of their training as a detective inspector around what samples would be need to be recovered. So it's within it's just a timeline. So your immediate high risk would be within 24 hours, and then your longer term ones, similar sort of process in terms of what you would recover in terms of.
And that's within the guidance that's...
Yeah, it is, yes. Detailed in the app,
Okay. Could you just, again, page 2, just elaborate a bit more on the authorised professional practice reporting restrictions for teachers and what those might include?
Yeah, this again another interesting one. This was the Education Act, which introduces reporting restrictions preventing the publication of any material that would actually lead to the identification of a teacher who has been accused by or on behalf of a pupil or from the same school. So where that identification would identify the teacher as the subject of the allegation in terms of going missing with that child. The reporting restrictions apply up until the point that the accused person is charged with the offence, and it's only that the Secretary of State can actually, or the General Teaching Council for Wales, publicises the information about the investigation or decision in a disciplinary case arising from that allegation. So it's a determined body overseeing that investigation will actually identify the particular case. So the reporting restrictions only cease, actually, if the individual to whom the restrictions apply effectively waives their right to anonymity by going to public themselves. So if somebody comes forward and says, I was that particular teacher, or by giving written consent for another to do so, or if the judge lists the reporting restrictions on that particular case. So, I mean, that is almost a straight lift, really, from the app itself in respect of that.
Again, this is a very sensitive area, but I think that the guidance has been put in place probably to enable teachers to continue to be able to do their roles if that's appropriate, and particularly if that has been some type of misguided or indeed unhelpful reporting on behalf of a child who may think that there's been an issue but actually there hasn't been. And so it's to afford teachers a degree of protection to enable them to be able to continue to do their jobs as best as they are able, particularly post-incident.
And in light of that, do you think we need to do more with the education sector around missing persons?
Yeah, I think we do, and this is one of the reasons why we actually developed this process with Leeds to look at how we can develop something around missing, CSE and all the vulnerabilities associated with safeguarding. That CSE pilot will obviously, a fundamental part of that will be missing. So that will go to year 7 pupils, which is year 11 to 12 years old, and that'll form part of that process and evaluation, and see if we can actually roll that across the force. And fingers crossed, it looks at quite a really good product. That
Yeah.
We'll do that with education rates as well. So
No, that's good.
and they're fully supportive, etc. And they're training some of our schools officers of how to deliver it, and we're supporting that from the Central Safeguarding Governance Unit.
Yeah, no,
So it's really
no,
good. It's really
yeah,
good.
no, thanks for that. And page 3, just concerning some of the bullet points, but particularly around the NCA data sets, 15 for the years 15-16, 72% increase from the previous year. Do you think this is mainly due to the recording practices, or are there, excuse me, frog in the throat, are there any other observations you'd like to make as to why that increase is so high?
I think we're assessing risk far better now than we've done previously, and I think that's probably one of the reasons, if not the main reason, for the increase in terms of volume, etc. The missing adults incidence increased 72% compared to the national increase of 15%, and children missing incidents increased by 66% compared to the national increase of 20%. However, more detailed contacts in that range of the volume for adults across the force is wide ranging, some showing reductions of -30% and others showing an increase of 106%. So the picture is similar for children, ranging from -39% to 140% increase. So West Yorkshire's repeat rate is 1.8% compared to the national average of 1.9%, so actually quite lower in that regard. So we just continue to make sure that we get the assessment of risk right. You'll see in the NCA data that we've had a reduction around absence, which I think is absolutely the right thing. That invariably people who go missing do have some vulnerabilities, and it's how we categorise that. And I think the investment we've done with the training will obviously continue to show increases, perhaps in some of those key areas of threat and risk, in terms of risk, high, medium, low.
I think this is a really interesting question, actually, Commissioner, because the police involvement in these cases tends to be at the responding stage. And actually what we're talking about here is what ability do others have in terms of safeguarding and preventing people from going missing in the first place. So when you're starting to see an increase in private children's homes, when you're starting to better understand how many children are being cared for in foster care, for example, how many older people within the area are suffering from dementia or indeed other mental health matters, just the pressures on being a young person perhaps within society. There's a whole complex series of reasons as to why individuals may choose to go missing at a given moment in time. Further complicated, I think, by the fact that our communities are changing around us, and we've got more and more diverse communities with, again, difficult and complex needs. So I think there's a combination of factors in here, but the one that's particularly pertinent that Darren's mentioned is we are getting far better at assessing that risk once people are reported to us.
And you just mentioned it there, Dee, so how can we work more effectively with private care homes, for example, to try and reduce repeat missing for children in the care sector?
Well, again, in fairness, I think Darren's touched upon this. This is about our team engaging with the local authority residential homes, and in particular the managers. I think the work that the pilot is doing in terms of Erase is going to be very interesting. The fact that you're very keen on maintaining the numbers of PCSOs does mean that we will have some capability of being able to better engage more directly on a day-to-day basis and build up the relationships with the children who are in those residential homes. But also there's work to do with local authorities in terms of licensing as well. You know, at the end of the day, it becomes very, very difficult when children from out of the area are placed into the area, when everything that they have moved away from is back in the area that they've come from. I can understand entirely why children may choose to go missing to get back to those particular areas and the people that they know.
I agree with you that in terms of partnership responsibilities, this, in my view, it clearly is very important in terms of the roles and responsibilities that they have. So it's, it was good to hear about the consortium that's been established, which includes the 5 districts, and also this issue where you've talked about the attendance of the social care staff in special operations rooms. So is that, I take it that those people will be on call and come into a specialist operations room when required?
Yeah, and we're drawing up some sort of protocols to sort of how that will work, because what we didn't want to do with the local authorities is say come and sit in our SOR and they're not really tasked by the detective inspector or the inspector that sits within that environment. We want to make sure that they can provide something that's tangible, so we're looking at how we can fine tune that and make sure that this is so they can have access to records, etc. So we can, and there's a lot of technical issues around in terms of laptops, making sure they can connect to our Wi-Fi. So again, they are starting to attend. I think they've attended an incident in Wakefield, so we are starting to see the early involvement of that. I just said rather than just wait for the protocols, let's see how that works and just get best practice around that. So the consortium are leading on that, which is really good.
Okay, well that's certainly a step in the right direction, because, and again, it's good to hear about the IT and the portal mechanisms for sharing information. But it's one thing to share information, but then for somebody to do something with it is something else. So I appreciate the police role and responsibilities on this, but clearly the end game has to be around prevention and getting each of the stakeholders to take their share of the responsibility in trying to prevent the number of missing persons calls that come into the police, and any other avenue for that matter. But it's encouraging to see the steps that have been taken, and again, from a police and crime plan perspective, I absolutely understand the impact it has on daily policing and the resources that are required. Yeah.
From my perspective, you talked there about over 5,000 high-risk missing people, each one of which takes a minimum of about 20 hours to investigate. So as a consequence, that is a significant amount of time that we're then not looking at other areas of high risk and threat and harm. And my concern is that every single time somebody does go missing, they place themselves in an incredibly vulnerable position. Many of them are children. Many of them do not realise that there are others out there who would exploit their vulnerability, and that's my concern. And that's why I think it's incumbent on all of us to work together to try and reduce the risk.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Let's say, well, thank you for that report, and again, look forward at a future date to hearing about the progress and further work that we can do to improve this situation around missing persons. Okay, thanks.